Welcome to Amidon Planet. I am your host, Joel Amidon. Thank you for joining me in this never-ending quest to learn how to teach better. Today on episode 103 of the podcast, a Christmas episode of the podcast, I'm joined by Megan Clark, children's minister at the Orchard Oxford here in Oxford, Mississippi. We are talking with Megan today about the idea that love is a teacher. So as we are rapidly approaching Christmas, the celebration of the birth of Jesus, I wanted to make the connection between Jesus as a teacher, as a human embodiment of God, and God as the embodiment of love. So by saying Jesus is a teacher, we are saying that love is a teacher. And we're not just talking about any old love, but agape love, this unconditional love, or love that is given irrespective of merit. So we talk over and over again throughout episodes of this podcast and think about the actions of teachers, about learning how to teach better. I mean, just anyone that even is intentionally hitting play on an episode of a podcast that's talking about learning how to teach better, not only are they benefiting the students that they know within their classroom, but they're benefiting future students. I mean, that's unconditional love, right? That's they couldn't have did they earn it? Did they earn me trying to improve my teaching? No, you're trying to do it because you want to be the best version of yourself for your students, for your kids, okay, for your children. Those sorts of love, that love in action, like love embodied as a teacher, but then love in action. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we're doing as teachers. So just as the end of the year is coming up and we're wrapping up, and Christmas is coming and just wrapping it up. I just wanted to maybe offer some encouragement. Those of you that their break couldn't come at a better time for you, or just looking for a little bit of refueling. Maybe this offers a little bit of encouragement that way, that the actions that you're taking as a parent, as a professional developer, as a teacher, whatever, if you're trying to invest in somebody's life in order to help them get better at something, you are love in action. And so how do we do that, and how do we do that well? And that's what this episode's all about. So we're looking for what kind of lessons we can glean from this idea that love is a teacher. And so, as always, it is better to talk about these things with a partner. Megan agreed to come on and grace this episode with her presence, and I am so thankful for that. So without further delay, here's my conversation with Megan Clark, where we discuss the idea of love as a teacher, and because it's Christmas, we might throw in a few of our favorite things from Christmas. So here we go. Megan Clark, welcome to Amidon Planet. How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So yeah, thank you I know it's a busy time of year. It's right before Christmas. And I know in our household, we're a little excited. I'm imagining in your house, they're kind of excited too.
Yes, there's a spectrum of excitement in our house. My husband, Nate, is at the far end of not so excited. And then the kids are, not in the middle.
That's right. That's right. So, Megan, I don't know if you could take a quick moment to do a self-introduction. Just tell people who you are.
Sure. My name's Megan Clark. I am the family pastor at the Orchard Oxford in Oxford, Mississippi. And I'm also a mom to two kids. I've got an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old.
Awesome. And we've known each other for quite some time. I don't want to say almost as long as we've been at the Orchard, I want to say. I think you were there as a student, right?
I was. That was, oh goodness.
For us, it was 2011.
Yeah, I was 2009. So it was when I started in Oxford. So yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah. Long time. That's good. Mm-hmm. So, so having an opportunity to talk about having a Christmas episode, it's kind of fun, get to talk about some things. I wanted to talk about some favorites, some fan favorites, family favorites, or whatever you want to do around a few little selections. I gave you a couple prompts. So just curious, favorite Christmas movie? What do you got for a favorite Christmas movie?
Okay, so I love Home Alone.
Yes.
I think Home Alone 2 is actually my favorite.
Whoa, hot take. There you go.
I love Tim Curry, and also just the New York setting is very fun.
Yes.
And I'm a sucker for physical comedy, so people falling down is gonna get me every time. So I think Home Alone 2 is probably my favorite. Yeah.
Well, is Christmas in New York? That's a song, right?
Lost in New York. Oh yeah. I think so. Something like that.
It sounds like it. I would say for us, another New York movie, Elf. Elf is a fan. I mean, I would say like my personal one, and I got introduced to it late, is It's a Wonderful Life. Love that movie. Want to watch it. A lot of times though, I'm watching it by myself. So, but if I put Elf on, like I mean, Jack had a hot take today that he did not appreciate Elf as much as I thought he did. But I think he's
Oh
just doing that
no.
I think he's just doing that to be different. Cause like he'll pull up
Mhm.
every now and then and be like, we're Katie and I'll have a little like, slow talk to each other. And he's like, I like to whisper too, like, so like you pull out
Yes.
the quotes are like there all the time,
Hmm.
and like yeah, whenever like I have class at like 10 a.m., I'm like 10 a.m. Santa Claus. So yeah, I think it's part of the fabric of it feels like Christmas when we start that movie. That
Yes.
feels like a beginning. What
A
about
solid
Christmas?
choice.
Yes, yes. So what about Christmas song? What about Christmas song?
So my favorite Christmas song is kind of obscure.
No, no, I love it.
I love a lot of Christmas music, but the song I listen to every Christmas and also every Easter is a song called "A Stick, a Carrot, a String." It's by the band Me Without You. And they are a band that I don't recommend to a lot of people because they have this very cacophonous sound. But my husband, Nate, and it was our favorite band in high school. And we went to see their last show of their farewell tour last year,
Oh
which
wow.
was really fun. But this song, it goes through Jesus's birth and then also like the Easter story, but the Jesus's birth section is kind of from the perspective of the animals
Oh,
on the scene. And it's just this really lovely song. Like the line that I always come back to in it that makes it really resonate with me is it's no clever talk nor gift to bring requires our lovely lowly king. Come you empty handed, you don't need anything. And it's this just like really it's just like a really pleasant song. I listen to it every year, Easter, Christmas.
I'm gonna have to look that up. I'll look it up.
Yeah.
Very good. I went more classic. I like the one. I like the Christmas "Baby Please Come Home" by the original by Darlene Love. I just love the
Yes.
Wall of Sound, Ronnie Spector, or what Phil Spector
Yes.
stuff.
Hmm.
Um, but then also the whole "A Very Special Christmas," like those that series where it had like
Uh-huh.
kind of like current pop stars and stuff singing stuff, and someone who's had a kind of a comeback with her, Luke Combs covering her song. Tracy Chapman has this version of "Oh Holy Night" that
Uh,
is, yeah, that's
that that's probably my favorite like classic Christmas song is
yeah.
"Oh Holy Night." I love that song.
Well, and I'm kind of finding it out around my house that a lot of people don't like covers, like covers of songs.
Yeah.
So like I have a great cover. You might not like this. Well, no, I think you would like this. It's a cover of Anti-Hero by Josiah and the Bonnevilles.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and it's awesome. Love it. Every time I play it though, people are like, it doesn't sound like the real thing. And but I'm like,
Yeah.
well, that's kind of the deal. They kind of make it their own and take a
Yes.
great song and make it their own. But
Yeah.
you think about Christmas songs, most of them are covers, right? It's
Oh
like
yeah.
people's different interpretations of different songs. I love that Very Special Christmas because there's all these, different ones. I think the one I have is like a gold cover and it's got Sting singing Three Ships. Saw three ships come sail, that one. And then there's a great one. Patti Smith sings We Three Kings.
Oh, it's
That's
good.
it's really like kind of
Yes. Uh-huh.
mysterious. Yeah, yeah. But it ends on a bang. But like, yeah, Tracy Chapman singing "Oh Holy Night" is pretty darn good. So
Yeah. We have a CeeLo Green Christmas album that we really like
nice.
at our house. Yeah, that's a good one.
Wow, CeeLo Green, that's awesome. Um, the favorite. How about this? Favorite Christmas tradition. This could be something new or old, whatever. Maybe with both have families, so maybe we've instituted some things. So what do you got?
Yeah, I this took me a little while to think about because growing up, we didn't have any traditions that were like, oh, we always bake this cookie or do this
Hmm.
thing. But when I think about Christmas, the thing that just instantly comes to my mind is being at my grandparents' house on Christmas Eve. It's my mom's parents. we all call them Mama Joe and Poppy. And we go there every Christmas Eve. I'll be there this Sunday night, but it's just my mom's family, and it's very low key. For years, my grandmother did fried shrimp, was like what we had on Christmas Eve
Nice.
night.
Yes.
So I also fried shrimp is a favorite Christmas tradition for me. But there's just something about it that's so simple and cozy feeling. Like, it's just, when I think of Christmas, I think of being at my grandparents' house on Christmas Eve. So it's nothing like extraordinary, but that's my favorite Christmas tradition, is being at their house on Christmas Eve.
Nice, nice. Well, I was thinking of one, and I was thinking of something from when I was a kid, that we had a few, but then I was thinking, like, Katie and I have been married for over 20 years now. And so, I was thinking, like, there's got to be something, from when we've had our time together. And one of them was, when we were, first a couple, we were in our own home for Christmas. So we were always traveling. And so, we had a tradition that got started where Ralphie, the early Alfie, started to visit us before we would leave.
Yes.
And so something either to, like sometimes a movie or little things, like Ralphie says, like, hey, open up something in your home, and a little surprise and things. And so Ralphie came, early on in our relationship, and then has continued to visit us up and even till last night. Ralphie visited us, and we had an ice cream sundae bar was set up by Ralphie, and then we had like a little popcorn maker that he got for us, because he knows the family likes popcorn. So like Ralphie there, because again, we will be traveling on Christmas, so it's one of those things that I really like that we do, and some other people have taken on to that too. But Ralphie the early Alfie is for us.
Is Ralphie an elf on the shelf, or is this pre-elf on the shelf?
Ralphie was a pre-elf on the shelf. Like, nice. Ralphie's old school. So like, he once, we once had an elf on the shelf that would visit us periodically, but Ralphie, I don't think appreciated. And then I think Ralphie talked to our dog Maisie about the elf on the shelf, and that elf is no longer with us anymore. Ralphie's still there, because Ralphie and Maisie, good buds, pals forever.
That's what the elf gets for stepping on Ralphie's territory.
That's right. Yeah, there's definitely a territory. I don't know if, Ralphie's favorite movie is Goodfellas, by the way. I don't know. It's not a Christmas movie, but that and Die Hard. Fantastic. Yes. That's funny. All right. Transition now. So I love these like moments I'll have where just have an idea and then wanting to talk to somebody about it. And again, you're being willing to come on and talk about it, because I think you have a great insight on it. Is this idea of love as a teacher, and thinking about Jesus. Jesus is love, and that so love is a teacher. So what does that mean? So what resonated for you when I asked you to be on this episode about love as a teacher?
Yeah. I feel like it may sound kind of cheesy or kumbaya or something, but I really think love is just so powerful, and knowing and feeling loved by someone is life altering. Especially when you receive that love without really doing anything to merit it or deserve it.
Yeah.
I am a big fan of Fred Rogers, like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. It's just one of my and plenty of other people's heroes. But he once said, I don't think anyone can grow unless he's loved exactly as he is now, appreciated for what he is rather than what he will be. And I think for anyone who's teaching or leading in any capacity, the most impactful thing that we can do is to love and accept someone as they are today, before they make any progress, or even when they seem to go backwards. that just appreciating someone for who they are rather than what they might be one day is just really impactful for a person.
Yeah. Yeah. Being present in the moment with them right at that point in time, and how do we love on them right there?
Yeah. Yeah. Offering someone like dignity and respect to even like the youngest child that we might teach, I think is really important and a loving thing to do.
Yeah. I love that you brought up Fred Rogers. He's the more and more because one of my friends, Ann Monroe, she's a big fan of Fred Rogers. We had a book that we read together about him, and just like the things that he is, I think, we still need those lessons. I remember when he talked about 9/11, and I was a
Yes.
pre-service teacher when 9/11 happened, and he had that, quote. I think it's been seen on like social media, but someone snipped it off, and I've seen it a few times now where someone on like a daytime talk show or like Today Show or something like that asked him like, well, how do you talk to children about this? And he's like, look at the helpers, right? Point to those folks, point to those people that are, helping others in this point in time, that are loving on people. And it's not like, well, do you deserve this love? No, no, no. They were just going out and loving on people. And it's like the fact that he would highlight that. I don't know. He's kind of brilliant. He's very brilliant. Yeah.
Yes.
Brilliant. Very brilliant. So, yeah, no, that's good. So I guess, this isn't a sermon, definitely not. But to look at this idea that love is a teacher, that might be a little abstract to some folks. Again, might be a little bit kumbaya. But when I think about that connecting the dots between that love is like not just it's a verb and a noun all at the same time. But then,
Right.
how do we make that connection that Jesus, who is a teacher, and then God is love? How do we make that connection? I don't know. Did you have anything that led to some of those connections?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some sections of like scripture that are pretty that like state it in pretty plain language. Like there's a lot in First John where it
Yeah.
talks about like uh First John 4:9 is this is real love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his son as a sacrifice to take away our sins. And I think that's such a good example of even like that Fred Rogers quote earlier of loving someone even when they may not love you back or may not show it or be able to show it. Um, and that the way that God showed his love was in sending Jesus. And that Jesus brought that love to us in the way that he taught and the way that he approached people. That's something that comes to mind just off the top of the head.
Yeah, I definitely pulled out that 1 John, that 4:7-12. I think we have slightly different versions, but they're all, the same stuff. But, this just talking very specific, for God is love. And then I love that the bottom part of that toward the 12th verse, I believe. Since God loved us that much, we surely ought to love each other. No one has ever seen God, but if we love each other, God lives in us, and his love is brought to full expression in us. Like, that's, that idea that we get to be that love towards others is kind of an amazing thing. And so thinking about that, Jesus, who is this, ultimate teacher, we're going to go on a limb and say he's number one teacher ever. I'm going to go there.
I'm willing to do that.
There you go. And then that Jesus is God. And then we're saying that God is love. And so then Jesus as a teacher is this embodiment of love in the world, like interacting with people and showing us how to do it,
Yeah.
which is kind of amazing. And so if we think that love is a teacher, then how should we teach, right? Right. So then we get those examples, because that's like really he's showing us how to be love within the world. Because if we're supposed to be the expression of him through what we do in the world, not that we need to, and that's the thing that some people think is like, oh, we need to like do all these, do all these things to check a box in order to get to the gates. Like, no, we already punched our ticket. We're fine. But now, it's just like because you because you love Jesus and because you love others, then okay, so how do you act if you're someone that's like love in action?
Something that I thought about as I was getting ready for this is I preached a sermon a couple of years ago that really was about parenting, but the text that I used for it was from Philippians. It's Philippians 2, I think. Yeah, Philippians 2, verses 5 to 8. And it's where it says, you must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had. Though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges, took the humble position of a servant, and was born as a human being. When he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in obedience to God and died a criminal's death on a cross. And even though that passage, it doesn't have anything explicitly to say about teaching or parenting the way that I taught it a couple of years ago, what I did see in it, though, was this core of Jesus's character and approach to his life and ministry being one of humility and not seeking after having like power over people, but coming alongside people and serving them. And so when I think about how to teach in a loving way, I think it's exactly that it's not striving to be powerful and to exert power, but to give up power a little bit, to come alongside of someone else where they are, as they are, and to walk alongside them, side by side, not like dragging or pushing. That passage to me has always really gotten at the core of who Jesus is and was, and how we can begin to have the mindset of Christ as one of humility.
Yeah. Well, that reminded me of like when Joey Bates came on here and we talked about the Jesus feeds the 5,000 because we were talking.
Yeah.
I got a chance to come in and talk to the collective. I think the collective
Yes.
about the Book of Mark. I think it was the Book of Mark. Anyway, but we talked about Jesus feeding the 5,000, and how that could have been such a Jesus just stands on top of a hill and just all of a sudden in front of you is a steak dinner, right? Versus like you said, like giving up power, right? What you said, like, hey, you feed them, right? Go see what they have. And then think about all the people that got to participate, the people that, the kid that gives some fish and someone gives up a loaf and like they're giving up their food. Like they get a chance to give, even though, Jesus knows that they're going to get some food, but they don't, right? They gave everything they had, towards this meal, and then allowing then the disciples to go and deliver it to them, right? It's not, it's saying like, not like the chef going out around and everybody, right, and handing everything out, but it's actually the disciples and showing that, hey, a lot of people got to participate in this, and it wasn't just Jesus. And that's why like sometimes I get mad that it says Jesus feeds the 5,000. It's like Jesus facilitated feeding the 5,000. I mean, I know he's behind it all, but but it's genius the way that is set up. That it was no, it's not just me. It's us as a community doing this together.
Yeah, and I think you see that like all throughout the Gospels, the books that tell the story of Jesus's life. Over and over again, you see Jesus giving people an opportunity to practice what he's taught them. And like, he sends the disciples out in pairs. And even, toward the end of Jesus's life, when he tells them that they're going to do even greater things than he has done through, the power of the Holy Spirit. And so I think you see Jesus giving up a lot of things over the course of his life to make room for other people to grow and to practice what they've learned.
Yeah. I mean, like sometimes when you see kids like acting like a teacher, like you see them wanting to be bought, like, hey, I am the
Yes.
teacher. I'm here. You are the students, and you shall sit down and be quiet and everything, and like
Yes.
listen to me. Versus like these true master teachers, you kind of see that sometimes they don't even talk, right? They're having they're facilitating interactions amongst folks versus and the things that they want to be said and shared are being said and shared or developed within like a Socratic circle or something like that. These questions, and they're not even. And then you see like how Jesus does his questioning, right? He just asks questions
Right.
and leads the person right to a place where they want him to be. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what does it mean to love your neighbor? And how he walks this person that's trying to trick him right down the path. Like, yep, go do that. That's exactly
Yes.
what you need to do. So,
Yeah. Well, and I think it's more powerful when you let someone come to a conclusion on their own too
hmm.
than like it's so there's a writer and pastor, his name's Eugene Peterson.
Oh yeah,
He's
legend. Yeah.
most famous for writing The Message.
Hmm.
But the reason he wrote The Message is because he was the pastor at this church for like 30 years. He noticed that people um, were having trouble understanding the Bible in his congregation. And so he wanted to give them, something they could read and understand. But he wrote this really great book called Tell It Slant.
Mm.
And it's a book about the stories of Jesus. And so he talks about how Jesus doesn't come like head on to a person, but that Jesus tells it slant, that he tells stories and allows people to kind of come to their own conclusions in the way that he didn't like lecture, but invited people in with stories and questions. That's something that I come back to a lot whenever I'm teaching kids in particular,
Yeah.
is that idea of telling it slant, letting them kind of enter into the story too and come to their own conclusions instead of me just, barking out
Yeah.
dogma at them.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and Eugene Peterson actually is the author, one of my favorite. It's like a devotional called Solo.
Yeah.
And it's was it Lectio Divina? Do you know?
Lectio Divina.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So where he has you do like some of these exercises with the passages where, it's like Jesus speaking. He's like, imagine yourself in the crowd and Jesus looks at you. When is he
Right.
looking at you? And why is he looking at you at that point in
Right.
the passage? And it's just like, whoa, it's pretty powerful sort of stuff. But yeah, like the fact that he rewrote the Bible in approachable language for a modern audience, he's legend, legend,
Oh
Eugene
yeah.
Peterson. So what I mean, so we kind of have these pictures through the Gospels of Jesus, but then also the Bible. If we say that love is a teacher, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and in an uh, earlier episode, I talk about some of my dissertation work, which is very exciting, called "Teaching Math as Agape." And
Yeah.
my writing of that was thinking about, well, what does it look like to teach math as an act of unconditional love, right? And to think about like sometimes, in math classes, sometimes we see this kind of goes back to what you were talking about before, where you know math classes sometimes you needed to perform even to get into some classes, right? You needed to
Yes.
perform. Was there a sense of belonging versus like how do we teach in a way that is people do feel loved, that they have belong, and then meeting them where they're at, and so that they can perform and touching on their context that they're familiar with, just like Jesus would, and to help people make sense and come to the conclusions that that he wants them to within the context of things that they understand and know. And so anyway, but besides that, so thinking about, well, if love is a teacher, then how should we
Right.
teach? And we've already talked about a couple of those things, but what are some examples or things that we can pull out? But also too, I thought there's a very famous verse, 1 Corinthians 13:4-7, that people have heard probably at a wedding
Yes.
ceremony sometime. but
Uh-huh.
but thinking about it, like, and I'm just going to read it, and maybe that'll bring us up some things. So,
Mm-hmm.
love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. Does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wronged. Does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. So I thought if we think about this idea of love as a teacher, then how should we teach? And then reading that last sentence, love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful and endures through every circumstance. I thought of all the teachers and all the great stuff that they endured and did through COVID,
Yes.
where it was like,
Oh
hey,
my
by the
gosh.
way, you're going fully online in a week.
Hmm.
Go. Yeah.
Yes.
And seen some of the miracles that happened there. But I don't know, like, is that bring anything up for you?
Oh,
Any
that
examples or
pass.
anything?
Yeah, let me think. That passage is such a challenging one, I think, when I think about approaching teaching or even just like parenting
Well,
kids to,
let me brag on
yeah.
you then. Okay. So, because I get to observe you teaching and I see like these excitable kids and during our kind of our full group time on Sundays. And I get a chance to see you up in front of the stage and just I mean, uncontained energy from all around where
Sure.
kids are excited to share, to participate, and you're inviting them in. And yeah, it might not be perfect. There might be, yeah, the chairs
It's
are
never
nice.
perfect.
Yeah, yeah, the chairs are everywhere, but like that patient and kind, but then also too does not demand its own way. Like, hey, here's what we need, here's what we want to get done, and it goes in a little bit different ways every time. But hey, we still get to share either the story or just this idea of God's love and in this space. And just even if they don't remember the words, they saw God in action there. So I'll brag on you a little bit there.
I appreciate it. I really somebody like a long time ago said, and it wasn't original to them, but they said something about things being caught, not taught.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I've taken that to heart in whenever I'm teaching. So, like in my context, sometimes it's on a Sunday morning in like the main service, and sometimes it's with the kids, and most of the time it's with the kids. And I, I think the most loving thing I can do most of the time is pay attention to the kids in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that takes a good deal of patience. But taking the time to hear what they think is important and what they want to say and letting them know that I've heard them. Um, that often feels like the most loving thing that I can do while I'm teaching, even if it gets me off task or, when I get interrupted 20 times. Taking the time to make sure that they feel seen and heard in their time with me is the most important thing to me. Um, and trusting that they're going to catch, the important things along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Now that is easier for me to do in my setting where I don't have like standards that I'm having to meet or things like that. But yeah, that's kind of a guiding, I guess, principle for me is really focusing on making sure that my kids feel seen and heard while they're with me.
Yeah, I think that's important too. Thinking about the idea about. I mean, I've actually had there's another podcast that I host on. It's called the Road to Better Teaching, where people talk about teachers like these, three teachers that they want to thank on their path. And over again, people would talk about a teacher that saw them, right? That,
Yes.
you think like not just taking attendance, I saw that you're here today, but no, saw in who they are and like
Yes.
their own personalities and quirks and like
Oh yeah.
like to actually see someone for who they are and where they're at and just like you talked before, loving them for who they are at this current time and not
Mm-hmm.
who they could be, right?
Yes.
Like yeah, your imperfect self, my imperfect self, we're all going to love each other for who we are at this present time. And that's such a powerful thing. And and the thing is, like, if you take the time to do that, guess what? Those kids want to perform, like that. Then then there's the ability
Mm-hmm.
that they want to perform
Oh
for
yeah.
you.
Yeah, because they have that like trusting relationship with you then. And you say that immediately, like the teacher springs to my mind who was like that for me, as soon as you say like talking
Who's
about a teacher who did that.
Well, shout it out. Who's that teacher?
As my third grade teacher, Miss Stewart,
Nice.
at Raleigh Elementary School.
Yeah,
I loved writing stories, and so she would let me read my stories to the class every Friday because I was constantly writing them.
that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
Ooh,
Mrs. Lowell let Jake Schneider and I create a newspaper in first grade,
awesome.
and we would just learn how to read. And like, what better way? Like, hey, like, just you want to write
Yes.
it? And we had a little. She got us a box, like like a refrigerator box or something in the back. That was our office. Like it
Mm-hmm.
was, yeah. But yeah, being seen, and you think about the example of Jesus, how there was so many times, he's in all these crowds, and all of a sudden he picks somebody out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, he didn't do that for everyone, but he like, I don't know, Andy Stanley made this example, like do for one what you wish you could do for all, right? Like
Yeah.
see Zacchaeus, right? Or the woman that touches his hem, like, because she's just looking
Mm-hmm.
for some healing. And just like, looking at these people and seeing them and I mean,
Mm-hmm.
again, going back to that Eugene Peterson thing about imagine Jesus looking at you, I was like, it's pretty intense, but seeing like
Yeah.
how he's probably completely present in that moment and like, man, how can I do that better as a parent and as a teacher, as a teacher
Mm-hmm.
as well.
That story of Jesus with the woman who has been bleeding always gets me because it's a moment when like Jesus is passing through this town and he's with his disciples and this crowd is pressing in around him and they're busy like they're on their way to somewhere else. They're not like stopping and staying there.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus can tell that, this woman's desperate. She touches his cloak, and Jesus can tell that something's happened. And he says, "Who touched me?" And his disciples are just like, "Everyone's touching you. Like, what,
Yeah. Yeah.
what are you talking about?" Um, and the woman steps forward. And the fact that Jesus stops in that moment, looks her in the eye, calls her daughter, and tells her that her faith has healed her has always been such a moving story to me because it's this moment when Jesus very intentionally stops, looks someone in the eye, and is like emotionally supportive of someone who has been suffering.
Yeah.
That he had important things to teach and he had places to go and people to see, but that he took the time to stop and to meet her where she was at is really powerful, I think.
Yeah. Well, and it challenged, I mean, like even go further into the context, it challenged hierarchies too, right? Because like
Yeah.
the fact that he's, you know, taking his time, like you said, going around to see people and
Mm-hmm.
like, the to talk to a woman, right? Like even
Yes.
too, like there's so many times examples where he's flipping hierarchies, where he's talking to people
Oh,
and
yeah.
spending time with people that people are like, why is he spending time with them? Like, he wasn't just because he was a king, like right, like he was
Mm-hmm.
he was the tops, but yet the people that he spent time with were the people that you wouldn't expect, right?
Yeah. Hmm. The people
It's
he spends the most time and attention on
right.
are the ones on the margins.
Yeah. Well, and then the
Mm-hmm.
people that were, the worthy, I'm putting in quote marks, he had the most contempt for, and
Yeah.
like a lot of the religious leaders who were twisting the law and twisting
Mm-hmm.
things for their own benefit versus like, thinking about what's the actual intent, right? And so, like he did that over and over again, thinking about like pushing against even prejudice too as well. And so even the story of the Good Samaritan, if you dive deep about how, I mean, that's an
Yes.
anti-racist story. I mean, about like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, the hero in this story is someone you wouldn't expect, right? It's the
Yes.
Samaritan who you all look down on, but that's the person who did the right thing, is that actually love their neighbor, which you all know
Yes.
you should do.
And that Jesus was always all about like liberating and lifting burdens off of people. That his
Mm,
biggest complaint with religious leaders was that they were putting too much on the people's backs, and so Jesus is always um, lifting those burdens in those
yeah.
moments.
Yeah, and the fact that, yeah, and then going back to that Good Samaritan story, like the people didn't want to stop and help someone or love on someone who is injured on the side of the road, because then they would be ceremonially unclean, which,
Yes.
like Jesus, like, hey, let's not love your neighbor. That's the most, like, love on that person. Don't worry about
Yes.
being dirty. Okay. Let's get there. Uh, or when they're walking through the fields and they're doing God's work and they're snapping off grain heads and eating them, the disciples are, and they're like, well, they're harvesting wheat on Sunday, and like on the Sabbath, not Sabbath was
Yes.
Saturday. Yeah. And just like, again, focusing on the intent, right? What's the intent here?
Hmm.
So I think sometimes we get overthink some of those things, you know, and I know we have policies for reasons, but sometimes I think we overthink them, and like really think like, well, what's our role, right? What's our role here? It's like to help
Right.
educate our kids, or like to love on communities. And so sometimes we overthink that a bit, in my opinion.
Yes.
Any other examples of Jesus from the Gospels about like, for what does it mean to teach? How should we teach? I mean, obviously invest in relationships. He was very intentional with that.
Yeah. I think, investing in relationships, like Jesus had this core group of followers that he spent a lot of time with, teaching them how to teach, how to go out and serve other people. I think, like we've talked about, taking the time to really focus on the people that he's with, meeting them where they are. Um, and, I think also being attuned to what people need, what's like underneath. I think about this a good bit with kids. Like kids have all sorts of behaviors, but trying to get at what's underneath those
Mm,
behaviors and what the
yeah.
actual need is. And you talked about that a bit with like the questions Jesus would ask when someone is maybe trying to catch him out on something or something
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that, or Zacchaeus, up in a tree. That Jesus takes the time to ask questions to help get underneath whatever the behavior is that the person is showing, to what the actual need is underneath it. And I think that's another. I mean, it all kind of circles around this idea of like really seeing people and meeting them where they're at. But I think that's another way we see it, whether
Hmm.
it's in Zacchaeus' story or like when you see Jesus with the sisters Mary and Martha.
Mm, yeah.
And Martha's really busy trying to take care of the home, and Mary's sitting at Jesus's feet, and Jesus takes a moment to say to Martha, I know that these things are important to you, but it's, kind of helping her get to the point to where she realizes what's most important to her.
Hmm.
Um, and I love that story because I think with Martha, you actually get to see her later, like that it clicked. Because later on, whenever her brother dies, Mary is really distraught and crying, but Martha's the one who runs out in the street to meet Jesus, like meets
Hmm.
him before he gets to the house. And so I think you see her kind of come full circle on what Jesus had taught her earlier, that now she's like practicing it. Um, she gets a bad rep sometimes, but she's one of my
Yeah.
favorite people.
Yeah. Sometimes we like, especially, now's probably a good a time when maybe some people bring that up about, who's being present with family versus like doing other things, right?
Uh-huh.
Versus like versus, you could do things with family. You could do
Yes.
that as well.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I think when going back to the theme of love as a teacher, I think too, it's like the idea that you have been made in a way, and have the connections you do in order to, um, best help others connect with whatever you're trying to teach, right? And so to be in tune to those things. And so like, having, sometimes because I teach teachers how to teach. And so trying to help them become the teacher they were made to be, right? And not
Yeah.
saying like you need to and knowing that, we've been designed in all these different ways, but then that expression of love can come out in a lot of different ways throughout, like whether you're good at connecting with folks through, those developing those relationships, or if, you're able to see the behavior behind things, right? Be able to identify, like, hey, I was kind of like that. I know it's getting at that. So like, that's trying to tap into that and seeing like, how does that express itself, either through your teaching, through your parenting, whatever you're doing to interact with others in order to help them become the better versions of themselves, right?
Yeah.
Anything else that you wanted to share that you had? I know you had some notes. I don't know if anything else that we talked over or through that you wanted to bring up about love as a teacher.
I think we hit almost everything I had a note about.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, one other, because you're an experienced teacher and parent, what is something you have learned lately to help you teach better? This could be anything.
I think this may sound very basic, but the biggest thing that's helping me these days is just being around other people who have taught or who teach in similar spaces to me. So like I work in a church, so being around other pastors who I admire, who've been doing the job longer than me, has made such a big difference in how I approach my job. Like it helps me see my blind spots. So like I'm very introverted. I feel very confident in my ability to like prepare something and to deliver that thing, to teach it. But in like a back and forth conversation with people or like counseling sessions, I'm not as confident or as comfortable. And I've learned so much from working with other people who are, and getting to like watch them do it. And, I've told one of the other pastors I work with that like sometimes when I'm in a situation where I'm not sure what to do, I think to myself, okay, what would this person do? If they're like, if they were doing this, like, what would they say? How would they act? And so, getting to work alongside people who have strengths in areas where I need growth, has been really invaluable. So I think community is what is helping me teach better, now and really just always. Getting to be in a group of people who are also doing similar things. And who I trust and respect. That's helping me teach better these days.
That's awesome. And that's actually kind of going back to that 1 John 4:7-12, or that last part where if his love is brought to full expression in us. And so thinking about and considering how other people are expressing that love through their teaching, and then thinking about how do I do that myself, right?
Yes.
How can I be that expression? I've seen some other examples, and that's why we need to do it in community, right? We can't just do this solo. And I think that's the thing. Sometimes at the end of a year, you get a chance to reflect. I've had probably my most productive first semester of a school year. We have some new faculty members, and I'm getting to interact with them, and they come to me and say like, well, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? To talk about blind spots? I'm like, I was like, that's a great question. I don't know why we do that. And like, maybe we need to rethink it. And just thinking about like things that I've changed, like it's like big changes, like using those fresh eyes has been like the best thing. I mean, I got to tell them, maybe I need to give them a Christmas gift, but like they've just been a big investment in me. But again, because of that idea of community, right? Of like, how do we get together, and we're going to teach better if we're all committed to it and we all have similar ideas about it, but then also different perspectives. How do we take those together in order to make what we're doing even better for our students? So that's good.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Anything else you want to promote, put out in the world?
I don't have much. If you're 2 years old up to 5th grade and live in Oxford, I would love to see you at the Orchard Oxford anytime.
That's right.
But that's the main thing I've got going on right now, is just weekly kids ministry things.
That's awesome. Well, we appreciate you. We love participating, and our kids all love not I'm getting old. They're all growing out of kids ministry, but they love to help teach. And so thank you for making it a great place for us to do that and be together as a family. So
y'all are my MVPs. You know that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Megan. I appreciate you, and have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you. You too.
All right, that is going to do it for this episode of the Amidon Planet podcast. And actually, that's going to probably do it for this year for Amidon Planet. We've had a great year, lots of episodes, lots of different people we got a chance to talk to, and looking forward to 2024. And just, again, thankful for any time that you take to the intentionality of finding the podcast and hitting play. Like it's a very personal thing, right? It's not like you're going to hear this thing just playing on the radio, right? It's not like a song that you're just going to trip upon, right? You have to go out there and hit play on this thing. So every time you do hit play on the Amidon Planet podcast, we're very thankful, very, very thankful for that. And just, we're not going to take it for granted. So looking forward to 2024, looking forward to a lot of new episodes, got some exciting things planned, some different things planned. So, yeah, stay tuned. So if you're looking for ways to support the podcast beyond just listening, again, we appreciate every listen. First of all, anything that you heard in this episode, you can go to the show notes that can be found at amidonplanet.com/episode 103. Got a few links and things, and maybe even some of the verses that were mentioned. We'll put some links to that within the show notes. But then also, for those of you looking for ways to support the podcast, 1, listen, 2, subscribe, rate and review and share the episode, which will allow more people looking for similar content to find it. And also, too, that's a way to love on somebody. You know, if you hear something, you think like, that makes me think of someone. Or even, too, like Megan talked about, I believe, Miss Stewart, right? And so thinking about Miss Stewart and like how she saw her as a student, my hope is that Megan is going to share this with Mrs. Stewart and just say, hey, we were talking about this, and we talking about kind of love in action, and we're thinking about you. That's kind of cool, right? And maybe if I should go look up Mrs. Lowell as well. So, but anyway, if you see, you listen to one of these episodes that makes you think of somebody, or makes you think that maybe somebody should listen to something, or something that connects to something that you've talked about with somebody, go ahead and send a link. All right. That's what it's there for, because that's my thing. I mean, even thinking about like the last episode 102, about one of my favorite books, The Long Haul Autobiography by Miles Horton with Herbert and Judith Cole. That book has influenced me more than any other book, and I'm so thankful that Gloria Ladson-Billings and Phil Caldwell like shared that book with me. And I'm just hoping that even if there's one other person out there that maybe hears about that book or reaches out for it or goes and learns a few things about Miles Horton or some of the things that he did and it inspires them to do their own things, that's worth it, right? That's worth it for me doing this. And so that's what we want to do is hopefully that there's people out there that are accessing some material or getting learning about something that they haven't heard before, and that's the point about doing this. Is we're on this together. We're in a community learning how to teach better. So again, subscribe, rate, review, share. All are ways to show love to the podcast, but it might be a way to show love to another person as well. In addition, you can subscribe to the Amidon Planet download, which contains teaching resources and updates from Amidon Planet anywhere on amidonplanet.com, where you see join the email list button. Go ahead and hit that. We're sending that out about every month, just giving you some updates on some things and making sure you saw everything that we're doing here. But then also, if there's any other links to things that we think might be a benefit, we're going to share it. Okay. You can also submit a question, comment, or suggestion to the mailbag by sending an email to joel@amidonplanet.com. Love to respond to those and have come up with some pretty cool ideas for episodes, and looking forward to some invites in the near future based off some of those suggestions. So in addition, I'm always looking for opportunities to work with those who are looking to lead people to love others through teaching. If you have an event or opportunity to share, you can either send an email to joel@amidonplanet.com or head to amidonplanet.com/about to fill out the request to call form. Finally, check out Amidon Planet store, Amidon Planet Bookshop. Links are in the footer at amidonplanet.com, where your purchases support the production costs of the podcast. All right. So, thank you for spending time today on Amidon Planet or any time throughout 2023. We appreciate you. Thanks to Megan Clark for sharing her time and expertise Thanks to Matt Mifflin for the music in this episode. We always appreciate that. And finally, thank you to all of you out there learning to teach better and be the good in the world by investing in the lives of others. This world is a better place because you have decided to use the gifts you've been given to serve others. Thank you for all that you do. Peace.